Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. I stood at the entrance of Savory Haven, my heart pounding with a mix of pride and nervous excitement. The soft glow of the pendant lights illuminated the rustic wooden tables and the carefully curated artwork on the walls. The aroma of sizzling garlic and fresh herbs wafted from the kitchen, filling the air with promise. "Henry, darling, this is absolutely marvelous," Bianca said, sliding her arm through mine. Her emerald dress sparkled as she beamed at me. "You've outdone yourself." I squeezed her hand, grateful for her support. "We did this together, love. I couldn't have done it without you." As co-owners, we'd poured our hearts and souls into this place. It was more than just a restaurant. It was the realization of my lifelong dream. Growing up with nothing, I'd fought tooth and nail to get here. Now, surrounded by Portland's elite, I felt a sense of accomplishment I'd never known before. "Mr. Baxter." A booming voice cut through the chatter. I turned to see Marcus Hall, my old friend from my early days in the kitchen, striding towards us. His weathered face broke into a grin as he clapped me on the shoulder. "You've come a long way from flipping burgers, haven't you?" I laughed, embracing him. "Marcus, I'm so glad you could make it." Bianca's grip on my arm tightened slightly. "Henry, darling, who's this?" "Oh, sorry. Bianca, this is Marcus Hall, an old friend from my line cook days." "Marcus, my wife, Bianca." Marcus's smile faltered for a moment as he shook Bianca's hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Baxter. Henry's a lucky man." "Indeed he is," Bianca replied, her tone cool but polite. "If you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I see some guests I simply must greet." As Bianca glided away, Marcus leaned in close. "Henry, can I have a word? In private?" Confused by his serious tone, I nodded and led him to a quiet corner near the bar. "What's up, Marcus? Everything okay?" He hesitated, his eyes darting around the room. "Look, I don't want to spoil your big night, but be careful, all right?" "Careful? What are you talking about?" Marcus sighed. "It's about Bianca. I've heard things, Henry. Things that don't add up." I felt a flicker of anger. "What kind of things?" "Just stories. About her past. People she's been involved with. I'm not saying it's true, but—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. I forced a laugh, trying to brush off his concerns. "Come on, Marcus. You don't even know her. Bianca's been nothing but supportive. She's the reason we're standing here tonight." Marcus held up his hands in surrender. All right. I'm just looking out for you, kid. You've worked too hard to lose it all." Before I could respond, I noticed Rachel, my head chef, waving frantically from the kitchen door. "Sorry, Marcus, duty calls. Let's catch up later, yeah?" As I made my way to the kitchen, I couldn't shake the uneasiness Marcus's words had stirred up, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. "Henry, thank God," Rachel said as I entered the bustling kitchen. Her chef's whites were already splattered with sauce, her curly hair escaping from under her cap. "We've got a problem with the seafood delivery. Half of what we ordered is missing." I took a deep breath, switching into problem-solving mode. "Okay, let's see what we've got. We can modify the menu if we need to." As Rachel and I hunched over the inventory list, I felt a familiar sense of calm wash over me. This was where I belonged, in the heart of the kitchen, tackling challenges head-on. "You've got this, Henry," Rachel said, squeezing my shoulder. "We've been through worse, remember? That nightmare pop-up in Seattle?" I chuckled, remembering the disaster that had nearly derailed my career. How could I forget? At least the health inspector isn't breathing down our necks this time. We worked quickly, adjusting portion sizes and swapping out ingredients where needed. As we finalized the changes, I couldn't help but feel a swell of gratitude for Rachel's unwavering support. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Ratch," I admitted. "You're the best damn chef I know." She rolled her eyes, but I could see the pleased flush on her cheeks. "Save the sweet talk for your wife, Baxter. Now get out there and charm those customers while I work my magic in here." As I stepped back into the dining room, I scanned the crowd for Bianca. I spotted her near the bar, deep in conversation with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall and impeccably dressed, his salt and pepper hair giving him a distinguished air. Something about the intensity of their exchange made me pause. I watched as the man leaned in close, whispering something in Bianca's ear. She laughed, touching his arm in a gesture that seemed just a bit too familiar. As if sensing my gaze, Bianca looked up, her eyes meeting mine across the room. For a split second, I saw something flash across her face. Guilt? Annoyance? But then it was gone, replaced by her usual dazzling smile. She excused herself from the man and made her way over to me. "Henry, darling, is everything all right? You look worried." I forced a smile, pushing down the knot of unease in my stomach. "Just a small hiccup with the kitchen. Nothing we can't handle." Bianca leaned in, kissing me on the cheek. "Of course you can handle it. You're brilliant, my love. This place is going to be a smashing success. I just know it." As she spoke, I caught the man she'd been talking to watching us intently. When he noticed me looking, he raised his glass in a silent toast, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. "Who was that man you were talking to?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Bianca waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, just some investor type. You know how they are, always sniffing around for the next big thing." I told him Savory Haven isn't for sale, of course. I nodded, not entirely convinced. But before I could press further, a group of food critics arrived, demanding our attention. The rest of the night passed in a blur of handshakes, compliments, and the constant hum of a successful restaurant in full swing. As the last guests trickled out in the early hours of the morning, I found myself standing in the empty dining room, savoring the quiet. Bianca appeared at my side, slipping her hand into mine. "We did it, Henry. Your dream is finally a reality." I pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. "Our dream, love. I couldn't have done this without you." As we stood there, basking in the glow of our success, I tried to shake off the nagging doubts that Marcus's warning and the mysterious man had planted. This was everything I'd ever wanted. Bianca was everything I'd ever wanted. Yet as I held her, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "What if it's all too good to be true?" I yawned, stretching my aching muscles as I locked up the restaurant. The clock on my phone read 1:30 a.m., earlier than I'd expected. A mischievous grin spread across my face as I imagined surprising Bianca. Maybe we could have a proper celebration, just the two of us. The streets of Portland were quiet as I drove home, the occasional streetlight illuminating the mist that hung in the air. Our house, a modest craftsman we'd fallen in love with years ago, looked dark and peaceful as I pulled into the driveway. I entered quietly, slipping off my shoes and padding up the stairs. As I approached our bedroom, I heard Bianca's voice, low and urgent. My hand froze on the doorknob. "No, listen to me," she hissed. "We can't rush this. Henry's not an idiot. If we move too fast, he'll get suspicious." I felt my heart drop to my stomach. Holding my breath, I pressed my ear against the door. "I don't care how impatient you are, Lucas," Bianca continued, her tone icy. "We've come too far to blow it now. Once he signs the business over to me, we'll be set for life. Just a few more weeks of playing the loving wife." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I staggered back from the door, my mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. Not Bianca, not my wife. "Yes, I know the risks," her voice drifted through the door. "But think of the payoff. Savory Haven is already the talk of the town. In a year, it'll be worth millions." I wanted to burst through the door, to confront her, to demand answers. But something held me back. If I revealed what I knew now, I'd lose any advantage I had. Taking a deep, shaky breath, I forced myself to turn away. I crept back down the stairs and out of the house, my legs barely supporting me as I made it to my car. I drove aimlessly through the dark streets, my mind a chaotic whirl of emotions. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. They crashed over me in waves, threatening to drown me. How long had this been going on? Who was Lucas? And how could I have been so blind? I found myself parked outside the restaurant, staring at the sign I'd so proudly hung just days ago. Savory Haven. Our dream. My dream. With trembling hands, I unlocked the door and stumbled inside. The dining room, so vibrant and alive just hours ago, now felt cold and empty. I made my way to the bar and poured myself a generous glass of whiskey, downing it in one burning gulp. As the alcohol hit my system, a strange calm settled over me. "Think, Henry," I muttered to myself. "You need a plan." I couldn't confront Bianca. Not yet. I needed proof, something concrete that would hold up in court if it came to that. And I needed to protect the restaurant. My mind drifted to the mysterious man from the opening night. Could that have been Lucas? The way Bianca had laughed, touched his arm. A bitter laugh escaped me. How many signs had I missed? How long had I been playing the fool? As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, I made a decision. I wouldn't let Bianca and her lover destroy everything I'd worked for. I'd fight back and I'd win, but I couldn't do it alone. I needed help from someone who knew how to dig up dirt, someone who wouldn't flinch at the ugly truth. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Calvin Briggs, private investigator. I'd used Calvin's services once before, years ago, to track down a supplier who disappeared with a hefty advance payment. He was ruthless, discreet, and damn good at his job. My finger hovered over the call button. Once I made this call, there would be no going back. My marriage, my trust, my whole life as I knew it, it would all be on the line. But as I thought of Bianca's cold, calculating voice, of the dreams she was so casually planning to destroy, I knew I had no choice. I hit call. "Briggs," a gruff voice answered on the third ring. "Calvin, it's Henry Baxter. I need your help." There was a pause, then a low chuckle. "Must be serious if you're calling at this ungodly hour, Baxter. What's the job?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "It's my wife. I need you to investigate her. Find out everything you can about her past, her contacts, her finances. And I need you to find out who Lucas Reed is." "Jesus, Henry," Calvin said, his voice softening slightly. "You sure about this? Once we start digging, there's no telling what we might find." I closed my eyes, seeing Bianca's smiling face, feeling the ghost of her kiss on my cheek. Then I remembered her cold voice, plotting to take everything from me. "I'm sure," I said firmly. "Whatever it costs, whatever it takes. I need to know the truth." "All right," Calvin sighed. "Meet me at my office in 3 hours. Bring any information you have, no matter how small it seems." "And Henry?" "Yeah. Don't tip your hand. Act normal around your wife. The element of surprise might be the only advantage we have." As I hung up, I felt a strange mix of dread and determination settling in my gut. In just a few short hours, my entire world had been turned upside down. But I'd be damned if I'd let Bianca and Lucas win. I poured myself another drink, raising the glass in a mock toast to the empty restaurant. "Game on, sweetheart," I muttered. "Let's see who's really been playing who." The neon sign of Briggs Investigations flickered weakly in the gray morning light as I approached the dingy office building. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, and my stomach churned with a volatile mix of whiskey and betrayal. I took a deep breath, steeling myself before pushing open the door. The office inside was cluttered but organized, with filing cabinets lining the walls and a battered desk dominating the small space. Calvin Briggs looked up as I entered, his shrewd eyes taking in my disheveled appearance. He gestured to the chair across from him. "You look like hell, Baxter." I collapsed into the seat. "Yeah, well, finding out your wife is planning to steal your life's work will do that to a man." Calvin leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Start from the beginning. Tell me everything." So I did. I poured out the whole sordid tale. The overheard phone call, the mysterious Lucas, the plans to take over the restaurant. With each word, the reality of my situation sank in deeper, like a knife twisting in my gut. When I finished, Calvin was silent for a long moment, his face unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "You understand what you're asking, right? Once we start down this road, there's no going back. Your marriage, your life as you know it, it's all on the line." I met his gaze steadily. "I know, but I can't just sit back and let her destroy everything I've worked for. I need to know the truth, Calvin. All of it." He nodded, a smile touching his lips. "All right then, let's get to work. First things first, we need to set up surveillance. Your house, the restaurant, anywhere else Bianca spends significant time. Isn't that illegal? I asked, a flicker of unease in my chest. Calvin waved a dismissive hand. Gray area. Besides, it's your property. Now, about this Lucas character. Got a last name? I shook my head. Just Reed. Lucas Reed. But I'm not even sure if that's his real name. It's a start, Calvin grunted, scribbling in a notebook. Any other names or places you remember from the call? I closed my eyes, trying to recall every detail of that devastating conversation. She mentioned something about past cons, and there was talk about selling the restaurant and fleeing the country. Calvin's eyebrows shot up. Cons, huh? Sounds like your wife might have quite the colorful history. Don't worry, if it's out there, I'll find it. As Calvin outlined his plan of attack, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread settling over me. Part of me still hoped this was all a misunderstanding, that there was some innocent explanation for what I'd heard. But the cold, rational part of my brain knew better. One more thing, Calvin said, fixing me with a stern look. You can't let on that you suspect anything. Act normal around Bianca. Hell, act extra loving if you can stomach it. The more she thinks she's got you fooled, the more likely she is to slip up. I nodded, my jaw clenching at the thought of playing happy couples with the woman who was plotting to destroy me. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. As I stood to leave, Calvin called out, Henry, be careful, all right? People can do desperate things when they're cornered. I paused at the door, looking back at the grizzled investigator. I will. And Calvin? Thank you. He grunted in acknowledgement, already buried in his notes. As I stepped out into the brightening day, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The initial shock and pain were giving way to a cold, hard determination. Bianca might think she had the upper hand, but I was just getting started. As I left Calvin's office, a steely resolve settled in my chest. I'd play her game for now, but when the time came, I'd be ready. The next few days were a bizarre balancing act. At the restaurant, I threw myself into work, using the chaos of our successful opening to mask my inner turmoil. Bianca flitted about, playing the perfect supportive wife, but now I saw through her act. Every touch, every smile felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Henry, darling, you're working too hard, she cooed one evening, massaging my shoulders. Why don't we take a little vacation? Just the two of us? I forced a smile, turning to face her. That sounds wonderful, love. But you know we can't leave the restaurant right now. Maybe in a few months? A flicker of frustration crossed her face before she masked it with a pout. You're right, of course. I just miss having you all to myself. I miss it too, I lied, my skin crawling at her touch. Soon, I promise. As the days passed, Calvin's investigation began to bear fruit. We met in secret, usually in the early hours before the restaurant opened. Your wife's been busy, Calvin said, spreading photos across my desk. She's had several meetings with this Lucas Reed character. Real estate mogul, known for some shady dealings but nothing concrete. I studied the images, my jaw clenching at the sight of Bianca laughing, her hand on Lucas's arm. What else? Calvin's expression darkened. It gets worse, Henry. I've uncovered evidence of a similar scam Bianca pulled in Arizona. Married a restaurateur, helped him build up his business, then cleaned him out in the divorce. She was using a different name then. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Jesus Christ, how did I not see this coming? Con artists are good at what they do, Calvin said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. But we've got her now. I've set up surveillance in your house, in the restaurant. If she makes a move, we'll know. I nodded, a smile tugging at my lips. Good. Let's see what else she reveals when she thinks no one's watching. As I left the office that day, I spotted Rachel heading in for her shift. Her familiar presence was a balm to my frayed nerves. Henry, you look like hell, she said, concern etching her features. What's going on? For a moment, I was tempted to confide in her. But Calvin's warning echoed in my mind. The fewer people who knew, the better. I forced a laugh. Just the stress of opening, I guess. I'll be fine. Rachel didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. All right, but you know I'm here if you need anything, right? We're in this together. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I know, Ratch. Thank you. As I watched her disappear into the kitchen, a new resolve settled over me. I'd protect this restaurant and the people who truly cared about it, no matter what it took. That night, as Bianca slept beside me, I lay awake, my mind racing. The woman I thought I knew, the life I thought we'd built together, it was all a lie. But I'd be damned if I'd let her destroy everything I'd worked for. Let her think she had me fooled. Let her and Lucas plot and scheme. When the time came, they'd learn just how big a mistake they'd made in underestimating Henry Baxter. A week had passed since I'd hired Calvin, each day a torturous exercise in deception. I'd played the role of the oblivious, loving husband while my stomach churned with each of Bianca's false smiles and hollow declarations of love. The text from Calvin came just as I was closing up the restaurant. My office. Now, bring a stiff drink. My heart raced as I drove through the quiet streets of Portland. Calvin's gruff voice echoed in my head, hinting at revelations I both craved and dreaded. The fluorescent lights of his office cast harsh shadows as I entered, bottle of whiskey in hand. Calvin sat behind his desk, a grim expression etched on his weathered face. Pour us both a glass, Henry. You're gonna need it. I complied, my hands shaking slightly as I handed him a tumbler. What did you find? Calvin took a long swig before meeting my eyes. It's worse than we thought. Your wife isn't just planning to take the restaurant. She's been having an affair with Lucas Reed. The words hit me like a physical blow. I collapsed into the chair across from him, downing my drink in one burning gulp. How long? Based on the surveillance, at least a few months. But that's not all. Calvin pushed a file across the desk. Reed's not just some wealthy businessman. He's neck-deep in financial fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, you name it. I flipped through the pages, my vision blurring with each damning piece of evidence. And Bianca? She's in on it. They're planning to sell the restaurant as soon as it's in her name, use the money to fund their escape. I've got video of them discussing it. My grip tightened on the glass, knuckles turning white. Show me. Calvin hesitated. Henry, are you sure? It's not easy to watch. I need to see it, I growled. All of it. He nodded, turning his laptop towards me. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Bianca and Lucas, wrapped in each other's arms, their voices low and intimate. Just a few more weeks, baby, Lucas murmured. Once the idiot signs over the business, we'll be set for life. Bianca's laugh, once music to my ears, now sent chills down my spine. He suspects nothing. Poor, trusting Henry. He actually thinks I love him. I slammed the laptop shut, my breathing ragged. That's enough. Calvin watched me carefully. What do you want to do? The initial shock was fading, replaced by a cold, hard anger. We take them down. Both of them. I want everything they have, everything they've stolen. A slow smile spread across Calvin's face. Now you're talking my language. I've got a few ideas, but it won't be easy. Reed's got connections, and Bianca's smarter than she lets on. I leaned forward, a dangerous glint in my eye. I don't care how hard it is. They tried to destroy me, Calvin. Now it's my turn. All right, then let's get to work. First things first, we need to secure the restaurant. Make sure Bianca can't touch it. I nodded, my mind already racing. I'll talk to my lawyer, see about changing the ownership structure. What about Reed? Calvin's grin turned predatory. Leave him to me. I've got a few contacts who'd be very interested in his financial dealings. As we plodded late into the night, I felt a strange mix of pain and exhilaration. The life I thought I had was gone, shattered beyond repair. But from the ashes, a new Henry was emerging, tougher, colder, and hell-bent on revenge. One more thing, Calvin said as I was leaving. We need someone on the inside, someone Bianca won't suspect. Got anyone in mind? I thought of Rachel, her unwavering loyalty and sharp instincts. Yeah, I think I do. But I'll need to be careful how I bring her in. Calvin nodded approvingly. Good. The more eyes we have on Bianca, the better. As I drove home, the city lights blurring past, I steeled myself for the performance of a lifetime. I'd play the loving husband, the trusting partner, right up until the moment I crushed their dreams like they tried to crush mine. Bianca was asleep when I crept into our bedroom. In the soft moonlight, she looked peaceful, innocent. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Then I remembered her cold laugh, her callous words. "Sleep well, my love," I whispered, venom dripping from every syllable. "Enjoy it while you can." The next morning, I woke early, my mind already racing with plans. Bianca stirred beside me, her eyes fluttering open. "Good morning, darling," she murmured, reaching for me. "You were out late last night." I forced a smile, swallowing my revulsion as I kissed her cheek. "Just working on some new ideas for the restaurant. You know how I get when inspiration strikes." She laughed, the sound grating on my nerves. "My brilliant chef. Don't work too hard, love. We should celebrate our success soon." "Absolutely," I agreed, my tone light. "How about dinner tonight? Just the two of us?" Her eyes lit up, and I saw the calculation behind them. "That sounds wonderful. I'll make a reservation at that new French place downtown." As I showered and dressed for work, my phone buzzed with a text from Calvin. "Meeting set with your lawyer. 2 p.m. Don't be late." I arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual, determined to set my plan in motion. Rachel was already there, prepping for the day. "Rachel, got a minute?" I called, gesturing to my office. She followed, concern etched on her face. "Everything okay, Henry? You've seemed off lately." I closed the door, taking a deep breath. "I need to tell you something, but you have to promise to keep it between us." Rachel's eyes widened. "Of course. What's going on?" Over the next hour, I laid out everything Calvin and his team for her. The affair, the fraud, Bianca and Lucas's plans for the restaurant. With each revelation, Rachel's expression shifted from shock to anger to determination. "Those bastards," she hissed when I finished. "What can I do to help?" Relief washed over me. "I need someone I can trust to keep an eye on things here. Someone Bianca won't suspect." Rachel nodded, her jaw set. "Consider it done. No one messes with our restaurant." The possessive hour didn't escape my notice. I reached into my desk, pulling out some papers. "I want to make it official. How'd you like to be a silent partner?" Her eyes widened. "Henry, are you sure?" "Never been more sure of anything in my life," I said firmly. "You've been with me from the beginning, Rachel. You deserve this." As we signed the papers, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in days, I wasn't alone in this fight. The meeting with my lawyer, Daniel Carter, was equally productive. We pored over the original prenuptial agreement, finding loopholes and strengthening my position. "This is good, Henry," Daniel said, adjusting his glasses. "With this and the new partnership agreement, Bianca won't be able to touch the restaurant in a divorce." I nodded, a grim smile on my face. "And what about Lucas Reed? Any way we can use his illegal activities against him?" Daniel's eyes gleamed. "Oh, I think we can do more than that. How'd you like to start some rumors in the business community?" By the time I left Daniel's office, we had a plan in place. Small leaks to the press, whispers in the right ears about Lucas's shady dealings. It wouldn't be enough to bring him down, not yet, but it would start the dominoes falling. That night, as Bianca and I sat across from each other at the French restaurant, I marveled at her acting skills. She laughed at my jokes, touched my hand affectionately, played the role of the devoted wife to perfection. "To us," she said, raising her glass, "and to many more years of success." I clinked my glass against hers, my smile never reaching my eyes. "To us, my love. May we both get exactly what we deserve." As we ate and drank, I couldn't help but savor the irony. Bianca thought she was the one in control, the puppet master pulling my strings. But with every false smile, every staged laugh, I was tightening the noose around her neck. Let her think she had one. Let her and Lucas celebrate their impending victory. When the time came, I'd show them just how badly they'd underestimated Henry Baxter. The weeks leading up to our 8th wedding anniversary were a masterclass in deception. Bianca and I danced around each other, each playing a role, each waiting for the other to slip up. But I had an advantage she couldn't have imagined: Calvin's surveillance, Rachel's watchful eyes, and my own growing network of allies. The morning of our anniversary dawned bright and clear. I woke early, my stomach churning with anticipation. Today was the day everything would change. Happy anniversary, darling, Bianca cooed, wrapping her arms around me. I can't believe it's been 8 years. I turned, forcing a smile. Happy anniversary, love. I've got a surprise for you tonight. Her eyes lit up with what I now recognized as greed, not love. Oh, Henry, you shouldn't have. What is it? You'll see, I said mysteriously. Just be ready by 7. As she bustled about, getting ready for the day, I slipped into my home office. Calvin had delivered the final piece of evidence late last night, a comprehensive financial audit showing Bianca's unauthorized withdrawals from the restaurant's accounts. I tucked the file into my briefcase, along with the other damning evidence we'd gathered. Tonight, it would all come to a head. The day crawled by, each minute stretching into eternity. I threw myself into work at the restaurant, grateful for Rachel's steady presence. "You sure about this?" she asked quietly as we prepped for dinner service. "It's not too late to back out." I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "No, it has to be tonight. I can't live this lie anymore." She squeezed my arm. "I've got your back, Henry, no matter what happens." At precisely 7 o'clock, I arrived home. The house was quiet, candles flickering in the dining room. Bianca appeared, resplendent in a form-fitting red dress. "Oh, Henry," she gasped, taking in the romantic setup. "This is beautiful." I pulled out her chair, my heart pounding. "Only the best for you, my dear. Wine." As I poured, I steeled myself for what was to come. We made small talk through the first course, the tension building with each passing moment. Finally, as we finished the main course, I set down my fork. "Bianca, there's something I need to tell you." She leaned forward, her eyes sparkling. "Is this my surprise?" "I'm all ears, darling." I took a deep breath. "I know about Lucas." The color drained from her face. "What?" "I know everything," I continued, my voice steady. "The affair, the plans to sell the restaurant, all of it." Bianca's shock quickly morphed into denial. "Henry, I don't know what you're talking about. Who's Lucas?" I laughed bitterly, pulling out the surveillance photos. "Don't insult my intelligence, Bianca. I have proof." Her eyes darted between the photos and my face, panic setting in. These are fake. Someone's trying to set me up." "Oh, then I suppose this is fake too?" I pressed play on my phone, and her own voice filled the room, discussing their plans with Lucas. Bianca's facade crumbled. "Henry, please, I can explain." "Save it." I cut her off. "I've heard enough of your lies. But here's what's going to happen now." I laid out my terms divorce, with her walking away with nothing but a small monthly allowance. She'd sign over any claim to the restaurant, agree to a non-compete clause, and disappear from my life. "And if I refuse?" she challenged, a desperate edge to her voice. I smiled coldly. "Then I release everything to the police, the press, and the IRS. You and Lucas can enjoy your love story from separate prison cells." Bianca's shoulders sagged, defeat written across her face. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "I learned from the best," I replied, standing. "My lawyer will be in touch with the papers. I suggest you start packing." As I turned to leave, Bianca's voice stopped me. "Was any of it real? Did you ever really love me?" I paused at the door, the weight of 8 years pressing down on me. "I did. That's what makes this so unforgivable." With that, I walked out, leaving behind the shattered remains of our marriage and the life I thought we'd built together. As I drove through the night, a mix of emotions swirled within me: pain, anger, but also a sense of freedom. The confrontation was over, but the war was far from won. Lucas Reed was still out there, and I had no doubt he'd try to retaliate. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I had truth on my side, and I was done playing the victim. I drove to the restaurant, needing the comfort of the place I'd built with my own hands. Rachel was there, closing up for the night. "Henry, what are you doing here so late?" she asked, concern etching her features. I collapsed into a chair, the weight of the evening finally hitting me. "It's done." I confronted Bianca. Rachel's eyes widened. "How did it go?" About as well as you'd expect, I said with a bitter laugh. She denied everything at first, but I had too much evidence. She's agreed to the divorce, but what? Rachel prompted, sitting across from me. I ran a hand through my hair. This isn't over. Lucas Reed isn't the type to go down without a fight. We need to be prepared for whatever comes next. Rachel reached out, squeezing my hand. We will be. You're not alone in this, Henry. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. As I looked at her determined face, I felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, Rachel. I don't know what I'd do without you. She smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. Crash and burn, probably. Now, how about a drink? I think we've both earned one. As we sat there, planning our next moves over a bottle of whiskey, I realized that while I'd lost a wife, I'd gained something far more valuable: true friendship and loyalty. The war might not be over, but with allies like Rachel and Calvin by my side, I was ready for whatever battles lay ahead. Bianca and Lucas had underestimated me once. They wouldn't make that mistake again. The morning after my confrontation with Bianca, I found myself in Daniel Carter's office. The lawyer's sharp eyes took in my disheveled appearance as I slumped into the chair across from him. Rough night? Daniel asked, pushing a cup of coffee towards me. I gratefully accepted the caffeine boost. You could say that. Is everything ready? Daniel nodded, pulling out a thick folder. I've drafted the divorce settlement as we discussed. It's airtight, Henry. Bianca won't be able to touch the restaurant or make any claims against you in the future. Good, I said, my jaw set. What about the non-compete clause? Included, Daniel confirmed. She won't be able to start or participate in any similar business in Portland for the next 5 years. I leaned forward, scanning the documents. And the monthly allowance? Set at the minimum we discussed. It's enough to live on, but not comfortably. She'll have to find work if she wants to maintain her lifestyle. A grim satisfaction settled over me. Perfect. When can we present this to her? Daniel checked his watch. I've scheduled a meeting for this afternoon. Are you sure you want to be present? It might get ugly. I met his gaze steadily. I need to see this through, Daniel. No more hiding. The hours crawled by as we waited for Bianca to arrive. When she finally swept into the office, her usual poise was noticeably absent. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she took a seat. Let's get this over with, she said, her voice hoarse. Daniel laid out the terms of the settlement, his tone professional and detached. With each clause, I watched Bianca's face grow paler. This is ridiculous, she finally exploded. You can't expect me to agree to this. I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. You don't have a choice, Bianca. It's this, or I go public with everything. How do you think your friend Lucas would react to that? She flinched at Lucas's name, her eyes darting between Daniel and me. You're bluffing. You wouldn't risk the scandal. Try me, I challenged. I've got nothing left to lose. Can you say the same? For a long moment, the only sound in the room was Bianca's ragged breathing. Then, with a shaking hand, she reached for the pen. I hope you're happy, Henry, she spat as she signed. You've ruined everything. I stood, looking down at the woman I'd once loved. No, Bianca, you did that all on your own. As she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but it was a start. Daniel gathered the signed papers, a hint of admiration in his eyes. Well played, Henry. But you know this isn't the end, right? Lucas Reed isn't going to take this lying down. I nodded, a grim smile tugging at my lips. I'm counting on it. In fact, I think it's time we took this fight public. Daniel raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? How do you feel about attending a charity gala? I asked, pulling out my phone to make a call. As I dialed Calvin's number, I could almost taste the sweet anticipation of revenge. Lucas Reed thought he was untouchable, but he was about to learn just how wrong he was. The charity gala was in full swing, Portland's elite mingling and sipping champagne in their finest attire. I adjusted my tie, scanning the room for familiar faces. Relax, Maya whispered beside me. Everything's in place. We've triple-checked the tech. I nodded, grateful for her steady presence. And Calvin? In position, she confirmed. Marcus is here too, ready with the additional evidence. As if on cue, I spotted Marcus across the room. He caught my eye and gave a subtle nod. My old friend had come through, providing the final nail in Bianca and Lucas's coffin. The crowd hushed as Lucas Reed took the stage, his charismatic smile hiding the rot beneath. I clenched my fists, remembering all the pain this man had caused. Ladies and gentlemen, Lucas began, his voice smooth as oil. Thank you all for coming tonight. Your generosity will make a real difference in our community. I couldn't help but scoff. The only community Lucas cared about was his own bank account. As Lucas continued his speech, I gave Maya the signal. She tapped furiously on her tablet, and suddenly the large screen behind Lucas flickered to life. What the Lucas stammered, turning to see incriminating documents and photos projected for all to see. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs as evidence of Lucas's financial fraud and affair with Bianca played out in high definition. Lucas Reed, I called out, stepping forward. Care to explain why you've been embezzling millions from your own company? Lucas's face contorted with rage. This is slander. I'll sue you for everything you've got, Baxter. I laughed, the sound echoing through the stunned silence. Go ahead. I've got nothing left to lose, remember? You and Bianca made sure of that. As if on cue, the doors burst open, and a team of FBI agents flooded in. Lucas Reed, the lead agent, announced, "You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." The room exploded into chaos. Guests scrambled to distance themselves from Lucas, while cameras flashed from every direction. In the midst of it all, I spotted Bianca, her face a mask of shock and fury. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw the moment she realized it was truly over. As the FBI led Lucas away in handcuffs, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Marcus, a proud grin on his weathered face. You did it, kid, he said. Couldn't have happened to a nicer couple of snakes. I exhaled, the tension of the past weeks finally releasing. Couldn't have done it without you, old friend. As we made our way through the stunned crowd, I caught snippets of conversation. Did you know? I always thought there was something off about him. Poor Henry. Imagine being betrayed like that. It was surreal, watching my private pain become public spectacle. But as Maya and Calvin joined us, their faces alight with triumph, I knew it had been worth it. Drinks, Calvin suggested, a mischievous glint in his eye. I think we've earned them. As we left the gala behind, the sounds of sirens and shocked chatter fading into the night, I felt a sense of closure settling over me. The war wasn't over, not quite, but the tide had turned decisively in my favor. Lucas Reed's empire was crumbling, and Bianca's web of lies had been exposed for all to see. Now, it was time to focus on rebuilding what they had tried to destroy. Weeks passed, and Savory Haven thrived despite the scandal, or perhaps because of it. The restaurant had become a symbol of resilience in the face of betrayal, and reservations were booked solid for months. I stood in the bustling kitchen, savoring the controlled chaos of a busy dinner service. Rachel barked orders to her team, her confidence growing with each passing day as my partner. Table 7 needs their entrees, she called out. Henry, can you expedite? We're swamped. I grinned, rolling up my sleeves. On it, chef. As I worked alongside the staff I'd come to see as family, I marveled at how much had changed. The pain of Bianca's betrayal was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it no longer defined me. Just as we hit our stride, I noticed a commotion at the front of the house. My heart sank as I recognized the source, Bianca, looking pale and desperate. I've got this, I told Rachel, wiping my hands on a towel. I made my way to the dining room, where Bianca stood, pleading with the hostess. Please, I just need to talk to him, she begged. Henry, please. I approached slowly, keeping my voice low and steady. Bianca, you shouldn't be here. The restraining order. I know, she interrupted, her eyes wild. But Henry, you have to listen to me. I made a terrible mistake. I never should have. Stop, I said firmly. It's over, Bianca. Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Henry, please. I love you. I always have. Lucas, he manipulated me, threatened me. You have to believe me. For a moment, I almost wavered. The memory of happier times threatened to cloud my judgment. But then I remembered the cold calculation in her voice that night, the months of lies and deceit. No, Bianca, I said, my voice hard. I don't have to believe anything you say. Not anymore. Her face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. What can I do? How can I make this right? I sighed, suddenly feeling very tired. You can't. Some things can't be fixed, Bianca. The best thing you can do is leave. Start over somewhere else and leave us in peace. As security gently escorted her out, I felt a presence beside me. It was Rachel, her face a mix of concern and fierce protectiveness. You okay? She asked softly. I nodded, surprised to find that I meant it. Yeah, I think I am. We returned to the kitchen, but something nagged at me. Bianca's desperation had seemed genuine, but I'd learned the hard way not to trust appearances. Later that night, as we closed up, Calvin burst through the door, his face alight with excitement. Henry, you're not going to believe this, he said, waving a flash drive. Remember that recording we made of your initial confrontation with Bianca? I nodded, confused. Yeah, what about it? Calvin grinned. Well, I had my tech guy enhance the audio. There's something you need to hear. We gathered around Calvin's laptop, listening intently. As the recording played, my eyes widened in shock. There, buried beneath the surface noise, was clear evidence of Bianca admitting to the full extent of her plan not just to take the restaurant, but to frame me for financial crimes that would have sent me to prison. Jesus, Rachel breathed. She was going to destroy you completely. I sat back, stunned. And Lucas? Was he in on this too? Calvin nodded grimly. Based on what we're hearing, he was the mastermind. Bianca was just a pawn, albeit a willing one. As the implications sank in, I felt a renewed surge of anger and determination. We need to get this to the authorities. Now. Calvin was already on his phone. I'm on it. With this evidence, we can freeze all of Lucas's remaining assets. He won't be able to mount much of a defense from behind bars. As Calvin made his calls, Rachel pulled me aside. Henry, are you okay? This is a lot to process. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I'm fine. Better than fine. Actually, for the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe. She smiled, squeezing my hand. Good. Because we've got a restaurant to run, partner. As we locked up that night, I paused to look at the Savory Haven sign glowing in the darkness. What had started as my dream, then nearly become my downfall, was now a symbol of resilience and justice. Bianca and Lucas had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, they'd only made me stronger. With Rachel by my side and friends like Calvin and Marcus in my corner, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The restaurant hummed with life, a testament to the power of hard work, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds of true friendship. As I turned to leave, I couldn't help but smile. The future, for once, looked bright indeed. 6 months had passed since the night of the gala, and Portland was buzzing with the first hints of spring. I stood in front of Savory Haven, watching the morning sun glint off the polished windows. Penny, for your thoughts? Rachel's voice broke through my reverie. I turned, smiling at my partner and friend. Just thinking about how far we've come. Did you see the write-up in the Oregonian? Rachel grinned, holding up her phone. You mean this glowing review calling us the phoenix of Portland's culinary scene? Hard to miss. We laughed, heading inside to prep for the day. The restaurant had become more than just a success, it was a beacon of hope for the community. People came not just for the food, but for the story of resilience and redemption. As we worked side by side in the kitchen, I marveled at how natural it felt. Rachel had always been my rock, but now she was truly an equal partner in every sense. So, she said, expertly filleting a salmon, are you ready for tonight? I felt a flutter of nerves in my stomach. As ready as I'll ever be, I guess. Do you think it's too soon? Rachel put down her knife, fixing me with a stern look. Henry Baxter, don't you dare second-guess yourself. Angela is a wonderful woman, and she's been nothing but patient and supportive. You deserve this. I nodded, grateful for her reassurance. Angela had been a regular customer even before the scandal broke, and her quiet strength had been a balm during the tumultuous aftermath. Our first date had been tentative, both of us carrying our own emotional baggage. But over the past few months, something beautiful had begun to blossom. As the day progressed, the familiar rhythms of the restaurant soothed my nerves. We were in the middle of the lunch rush when I spotted a familiar face at the bar. "Calvin," I called out, making my way over. "What brings you here in the middle of the day?" The gruff investigator smiled, a rare sight. Can't a guy check in on his favorite client? Besides, I've got news. I raised an eyebrow, sliding onto the stool next to him. Good or bad? Depends on your perspective, Calvin said, taking a sip of his coffee. Lucas Reed's trial date has been set. The prosecution's case is airtight, thanks to that recording. He's looking at 15 to 20 years, easy. I let out a low whistle. And Bianca? Calvin's expression turned grim. She took a plea deal. 5 years, plus restitution. She's agreed to testify against Lucas in exchange for a reduced sentence. I nodded, a complex mix of emotions swirling in my chest. Good. I hope they both get the help they need. Calvin studied me for a moment. You're a better man than most, Henry. After what they tried to do to you. I shrugged, standing up as I spotted another wave of customers arriving. My story is far from over, Calvin. The future from here looks bright, and I'm ready to embrace it with open arms. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.